Welcome to Voice Rising with Kara Johnstad. Enjoy weekly conversations with leading luminaries, pioneering visionaries, singers, poets, musicians, and sound healers as we explore the profound role our voice plays on the path to self-realization and global enlightenment. The internationally acclaimed singer, composer, author, healer, recording artist, voice expert, creator of Voice Your Essence, and founder of the School of Voice, Kara Johnstad uses her extraordinary spiritual gifts to empower others. Everything in this world vibrates. Everything has a frequency. A pioneer in the field of voice work and transformational songwriting. Her breakthrough methods are helping thousands of people worldwide fine-tune their body-mind-spirit system and unlock the energetic frequencies of limitless creativity, health, and abundance. Share your voice, ask your questions, join in the conversation. Receive life-changing, positive transformation and rise together to create a sound world. And here's your host, Kara Johnstad.
Hello, welcome everyone today to Voice Rising. I am here with poet and storyteller Rosemerry Wahtola Trommer. And Rosemerry gets audiences to wake up and take on their creative endeavors. She also helps people find poetry in their own lives and tell their own stories. And her poetry has appeared in O Magazine, on A Prairie Home Companion, on Rattle.com, and she has a TED Talk out there. She co-hosts Emerging Form, a podcast on the creative process, and teaches poetry for mindfulness retreats, women's retreats, at hospices, and much more. And we're going to talk today about poetry process and, of course, her recent collection of poems, which I fell in love with this past couple of weeks, entitled Hush. So welcome, Rosemerry, to the show.
Kara, thank you. I am thrilled to be here today.
Yahoo! So, Rosemerry, I saw on that book that I received, which is Hush. It reminds me of the beautiful song, Hush Now, Don't Explain. It won the Halcyon Prize. And I thought how appropriate that it's in December, because many people don't know that Halcyon is the time around winter solstice, right? The time right around this season. Your poetry is very much about the balance of darkness and light, sorrow and joy, grief and acceptance. In these evolutionary times, we are being asked for the power of love to move more quickly than disease. And we are asked, I guess, to really stay in that calm being and bring lightness where things might feel heavy. Can you describe for us a journey that Hush takes us on, or maybe the journey that you're on in the moment as a poet?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for asking that. You're right. I really do believe that now more than ever, although at all times, we are called to bring love to the moment and to really show up and embrace the world that is. And that's certainly at the heart of this book, Hush. The book began as a response to the call for the Halcyon Prize, which said that they wanted a collection of poems about human ecology, which is to say about the human relationship with the natural world and our own being as natural. How humans ourselves are involved in the nature of being human, which was thrilling. You know, when I read that description, I thought, oh my goodness, that's what it's all about. So I actually put together the book as a response to just this idea that maybe we could have a collection of poems this way. And so the book in general, I would say, is looking, just as you said, at dark and light, and the oppositions that we see in the world outside of us, and how they resonate with any of the oppositions that we feel inside of us. And the book itself is trying to build a bridge between these two worlds about what do we see in the world around us and what are we experiencing in the world inside of us. I guess that's what I'm trying to do always with all poems. But these poems are more steeped in the natural world. Every poem in this collection is steeped in the natural world, and letting us find a mirror there to touch what it is to be alive.
And I think that is, for me, while I was reading it, it was so touching, because I would move with you along the path, or you take me to the river. And in one poem, you surprised me and introduced me to a snapdragon. And there are a lot of sacred moments reflecting our connection to environment. And as you know, not only as a poet, but you have your master's in the English language. I mean, language itself is a wild thing, right? So it is there in the environment. Before we go to school, we are longing to connect to the world with these sounds and these rhythms and these melodies that bring us alive. And whether we're listening to the bird or feeling the wind on our cheek or listening to our dog bark, there's this longing to allow language to shape us, and for us also to shape the world through sound and through language. And my question to you, I guess, is as we as a humanity grapple with species extinction and climate crisis, and we're struggling with such basic things, if I look at the environment that's not only the natural world, but the environment that we have in between us as a people, right? Struggling with things as basic kindness, and struggling with the sense of division, and knowing that we have destroyed literally 50% of our planet, if not much more, up to 70%. Share with us the connection of language and what came to you when you were on these walks, and what poetry can teach us about harmony, about respect, about the wild and the natural, and what we can learn. Yeah, I guess what we can learn on those walks, if we can learn to even save the earth through a poetry practice.
I think we can.
I know. Yeah. Oh, good.
I think we can, and I think that we can for multiple reasons. One is because not all poems, of course, but I feel that the poems that I write, and some of the poems that I most love to read, are the poems that allow us to fall deeply in love. It makes and fall deeply in love with the world itself, right? The world as it is, not the world that we wish it would be, but the world as it is. And I feel like that's step one, right? Is that to not overly romanticize the world, but to see it as it is, and then see our place in it. When we fall in love, we want to respect, honor, treat well. So the more we fall in love with the world, the more we understand our place in it, I believe, the more we want to do right by the world, right? The more we want to be in more harmony, in more peace, to protect it. I'm thinking of a poem that I wrote called Urgency. And do you mind? It's not in Hush.
No.
But I'd love to share it.
I just said sing it. Yeah, share it, and sing it.
I'll do both. This is Urgency. Again, the urge to bring gauze to the broken world, and medicine and a plaster cast. Again, the urge to fix things, to heal them, to make them right. Again, the chance to do the work, which is to look in, to touch the pain, but not become it. To see the world exactly as it is and still write it a love letter. To meet what is cracked with clarity. To mirror and grow whatever beauty we find. And I think this idea to meet what is cracked with clarity, that's where the language comes in, right? Is to allow us to when I say not touch, to touch the pain but not become it, we can use language to see what is there and to transform ourselves into action, right? To motivate ourselves into seeing what needs to be done. Like I'm not saying there's not work to be. There's lots of work to be done, and the poem I think helps identify that work, but it also helps stoke the fire in us that makes us want to do that work.
Yeah, I think it makes us, what I love about poetry and what I really enjoy about reading your, it's not even an enjoy, it's what I find, what was the word that I feel when I read many of your poems? It's more like a deep, calm relaxation, because the poem doesn't try actually necessarily to fix it. It simply names it like it is. And when you name things like they are, that broken leaf and the gauze, or that storm and the rainbow, sit in the same place. And because we have memories of resilience, and we have memories of the first kiss, and because we know there are also good days, somehow we feel stronger when we well, at least I did. This past week I was with you the last week in thought while I was preparing this, and I thought it's such a gift, because one feels not only brought into harmony, but one feels like one doesn't need to seek the answers, because one already has the answers within. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that was my moment. You also have you write here, which I think is so beautiful. Here in the garden, the trees do what trees do. They do not grow beyond their ability to support themselves. I really stopped and paused after I read that line. I grew up in America where shopping was a physical sport and hobby. I live a very simple life, actually, which I very much enjoy. Lesson from the trees. I thought that it was so beautiful when we connect also with our role, in that we have as human beings on this earth. The trees do not grow beyond their ability to support themselves. So true, and yet I hadn't thought of it really. I would love if you would share that poem and read it for us from your book, Hush, and it's called Lesson from the Trees.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I'll say that it was inspired in part by me looking out the window. So many of my poems are inspired by walking outside or looking out the window. And I just thought, well, why did the trees stop there? Why didn't they keep growing? How is it that some trees grow taller and some trees don't? And why don't they just keep going up, 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 up? And that was kind of the seed for this lesson from the trees. Here in the garden, the trees do what trees do. They do not grow beyond their ability to support themselves. In the top of this weeping birch, the branches are leafless and dead. They will never grow again, nor will the tree replace them. I think of all the ways we try to heal ourselves, each other, all the ways we go back to the pain of the past as if it had some answers. What if we could let them die, those thoughts, those wounded ideas of how it should have been? Let them turn brittle and gray. And when they have lost their weight, let them fall away. I see how the breeze moves through the leaves that remain. How green they are. How alive.
So beautiful. So beautiful. Rosemerry, we have 86,400 seconds a day to live, and at the end of the day, we close our eyes. The day is done. Gone the sun, come the moon. It is a dream of so many people to be a poet. Many, many people journal and take writing classes, yet very few people dare. You dared. You dared to put that title on and to release many books and to write a poem a day. You're nurturing the world. How does your day begin and end? And can you share with us a little bit about your poetic process?
Mm-hmm. And when you say you dare, I think of T.S. Eliot, do I dare? Do I dare to eat a peach? Do I dare? Mm-hmm. So the daily, I'm a mom of two teenagers, actually almost a teen. I have a 12-year-old daughter and a 16-year-old son. We live with my husband down kind of in the middle of nowhere. And of course, with COVID now, the kids are home all the time. Mm-hmm. And the day begins, I think my days are very much family oriented. Mm-hmm. I do a lot of writing in the morning, a big project. I'm actually working on a romance trilogy. Mm-hmm. In the mornings. In the afternoons, I teach lots of private students and classes for different organizations. And usually go outside and move, do something, skiing or walking or hiking. Mm-hmm. And I always write at night. And that is a long-term thing for me. It used to be that I would write when the kids would go to sleep, and now they stay up much later than I do. But sometime after we've had dinner and everyone kind of goes off in their own directions, I write. And that process of writing every day began in 2006. I'd been writing for many years at that point, but something really magical happened when I was in a class, and the teacher in that class, a dear friend of mine, Jude Jeanette, said that she'd just finished writing a poem a day every day for 30 days. And she'd had two other people do it with her, and she challenged us to do it. And I remember thinking, Cara, no way. A poem every day for 30 days. I couldn't imagine. But I found two women to do it with me, and we started, and we began on the spring equinox, and we wrote for 30 days. And after 30 days, we loved it so much, we said, let's just do it till the solstice, the summer solstice. And after 90 days, they both quit. But I did not. I was hooked. And I'll tell you what it was, is that for the first time as a writer, I understood the essence of practice. And I understood, I had often let myself get stuck. If it wasn't going to be great, if I wasn't going to write a masterpiece, if it wasn't going to be a really good poem, then I didn't want to write it at all, which meant that I spent a lot of time not writing at all. And by writing a poem every day, I immediately had to accept, you can't write a masterpiece every day. You can't. And once I accepted that, it allowed me to give up this this shackle, right, of good. It has to be good. And if that wasn't going to be what was guiding me, then I thought, okay, it doesn't have to be good, but it has to be true. And I let that be my new
mantra.
Yeah, let it be true. Let it be true. What's beautiful about that is that it allows every poem to be an exploration. It allows every poem to bring something new to me. It allows me to always be in service to the poem, as opposed to hoping that the poem will serve me. It's a very different mindset, and it's changed everything about my writing practice. And I have to say, it's changed everything about the way that I meet the world. Writing a poem every day means that I, all day long, I'm more available. I pay. It doesn't mean that I'm great at it all the time by any means. It just means that I catch myself more often. and invite myself back into the present, to invite myself to notice, to invite myself to show up over and over and over.
Beautiful, Rosemerry. We are going to take a very short break and then come back. Stay present, stay mindful, stay connected, and we'll be back with Rosemerry Wahtola Trommer after the break.
The cutting edge of conscious radio. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at omtimes.com. OMTimes, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hi, this is David Strickle. I'm excited to share my brand new show, The Stream of David Live, right here on OMTimes Radio. Each week I'll have exciting guests and I'll channel the eternal wisdom of the stream, a group of non-physical entities whose teachings have transformed lives all over the world. So join us for an uplifting hour each Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. That's The Stream of David Live right here on OMTimes Radio.
With happy clients all over the world, Kara Johnstad knows that your voice is the missing link to more authenticity, abundance, creativity, and health. An internationally acclaimed voice expert, Kara's breakthrough methods have helped thousands of people successfully heal their voice wounds and extinguish the story of self-doubt and shyness forever. Join in group trainings, attend online sessions, schedule one-on-one time, and invite Kara to work with your organization and community. Get started today. Go to www.karajohnstad.com and receive a special guided meditation designed to fine-tune your inner voice and welcome you on the voice journey.
A social distancing tip.
Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #alone together. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Hello, welcome back to Voice Rising. I'm your host, Kara Johnstad, and with me in studio today is poet, storyteller, and probably peace activist, mindfulness teacher, Rosemerry Wahtola Trommer, and we are talking about poetry and looking for or discovering, exploring truth instead of perfection while we write. That's where we left off, this sense of stripping ourselves from any false apprehension or allowing our senses to come alive in that truthfulness. I have a question I would love to ask you, and it has to do about rootedness. You talked about having that practice of every day writing a poem and every day writing that almost at the same time in the evening. And what I wanted to write you is this juxtaposition between rootedness and finding our place and the play with freedom. So basically, the rootedness that a kite would have to fly freely in the sky, but being held tight, with somebody holding it, or that a tree has to blossom big time and still stay in one place, and yet this inner restlessness that a lot of artists have to want to keep every door open so that we can explore and be totally free. So, what are your thoughts on how rootedness actually feeds freedom?
Oh, I think about this all the time. I love your example of the kite and the tether. And I think about poems this way, especially form formal poems like a sonnet or something, but really all poems that are finding their form. And I think about it this way, that let's say you have 14 lines and it feels like a cage. But then you can do anything inside those 14 lines. And in fact, it gives you something to push against. And in that pushing, you discover something new. I kind of love writing in kind of hidden meters so that people wouldn't necessarily know unless they read the poem out loud that there was a meter to it. And it just, what I find is that having this little bit of stricture invites creative response. It's like chaos theory, right? Chaos theory has one of the tenets is that there is infinite complexity in a finite space. And that's certainly how I think about the poem that wants to show up, right? Is that within that poem, anything can happen. That's what I love about a blank page. Anything can happen. And then we show up and something does. Something happens every time. It's a kind of real magic.
That's very magical. That's true. I want the listeners to hear a little bit more from Hush and more of your poetry. You have a very powerful poem, which I find is so appropriate. It opens with the lines from Marcus Aurelius, who said, "You could leave life right now, let that determine what you do and say and think." It reminds me also of the practice that some people do is just reading obituaries to become really aware that this time, as you said, is, finite and also infinite. So could you share with us the poem called Walking Up Mill Creek Road, Practicing How to Be Alive? The art of how to be alive, right? Yeah.
And I'll say that this is one of the ones, by the way, that has a little hidden meter in it. So I'm happy that you asked for that. It's written. The lines have 4 beats, and they're kind of. Well, I hope you hear it.
Okay.
Walking up the Mill Creek Road, practicing how to be alive. And though the leaves blush golden and red, and though the sun cups my face like a hand, and though the chill air makes me catch my breath, the wind whispers, "Friend, remember your death." And I feel so deeply, so wildly alive as I climb the hill, slight burn in my thighs, but I cannot pretend I am deaf as the wind whispers soft, "Remember your death." The Roman generals had their slaves whisper to them in their moments of greatness, "Remember your death," even as the crowds cheered to help them remember. Be humble. Be here. And the wind whispers yes to me and reminds me to move forward gratefully. Remember your death, it says. Live now. So I thrill in the evergreen trees. Even now they spike the air with their sharp green scent. And each step, I remember my death.
So profoundly beautiful. The wind whispers yes to me, whispers yes. Rosemerry, what does it mean to stand inside of yes, to step inside a circle of opening oneself in all totality? What shifts for us when we don't try to wiggle into having 50,000 choices to find maybes and that so-called freedom, but that we might gain by not committing? But what happens to you when you have only so many lines or so much time or this day to stand inside of with an absolute yes? Talk to me about your own process, about what happened to you when you made that full commitment to be present and as much as we can be, like while washing the dishes and all these things. But, allowing poetry to bring us this awareness of, okay, yes, that we're naming it as it is, right? The birch is a birch and Yeah.
The idea of saying yes to the world as it is first came to me. It was introduced to me, I guess, as a phrase, as a concept by my spiritual teacher, Joy Sharp. And I remember thinking, well, of course, thinking say yes to the world is much different than living say yes to the world.
Yes, exactly.
And so there it is that the willingness to be a yes in the moment, right, is the willingness to fully show up and to know that there really isn't a difference between the washing the dishes and the walking on the trail and the putting your child to sleep and the holding the kicking, screaming child having a tantrum, right? Every single one of those things, although some sound more pleasurable than another, every one of those is an invitation to show up. I mean, there isn't a single thing. And that's maybe part of what I love about poetry too, is the way that it continually leads me to that yes. Because I know for a fact that that every single thing in the world offers itself, as Mary Oliver says, offers itself to your attention. Every single thing in the world I could write a poem about, except so far ticks. I haven't been able to do that yet. But a rubber spatula, yes. The bark on the tree, yes. The crumpled up paper on the sidewalk, yes. But anything is worthy of our attention. And when we understand then that it's the quality of our attention that makes the moment and not the other way around, it's not the moment that makes us want to pay attention, but it's the way we pay attention that makes every moment worthy of paying attention to it. That's a little tricky. I hope that made sense, but we are the one thing we can control, and that our willingness to show up, that is the yesness that allows every moment to be poetry.
Love it. The yesness. I like that word. You just made that one up, Miss Poet. That is a yesness. This is a yesness. Read for us from Inner Eden and share with us more of this yesness. I believe it's on page 31 from Hush. Inner Eden.
Inner Eden. And if I found in me a spot of land where anything could grow, some miraculous soil that knows only yes, then what would I dare sow? In such tender territory, even breath might take root. A whisper becomes a seed, becomes an unknowable flowering. A song, of course, I'd plant a love song, but imagine if, as I knelt, lips to earth, a loneliness spilled from my pockets, strewing its millions of tired spores throughout the plot. And what if an arrow from an old wound chose then to dislodge? Oh, this dangerous dance at the edge of inevitable fertility, longing for the impossible, to plant only beauty. Its fruits receding all around us, growing only more beauty, more beauty. I guess I was thinking, so often we have no idea how every one of our actions, even our thoughts, have a ripple out effect.
Yeah.
And I would like to believe that I only plant beauty, but I happen to know that very unintentionally, I have really done some awful things that have had terrible, disastrous side effects. And they didn't start that way. They started small and potentially beautiful, but they grew into, big thorned bushes that tore at people. So, I think it's a terrible thing to know about the self, that even despite our best intentions, we can create very difficult circumstances. And that's part of the yesness of it, right? Is then to meet that, to meet that, to meet that.
Or the yesness is also not to wash over. I think there's a lot of, although it's good to have positive thoughts, and like you said, wouldn't it be lovely that we only planted a field full of flowers, right? Yet there are thorns in nature, and it reminds me of this story that you might know, but the farmer who prayed to God and he said, "Please give me sunshine," and give me sunshine. I don't want any more rain. Give me sunshine. I don't know if you know the story. And then God said, "Okay, are you sure? But are you sure?" And he said, "No, give me sunshine." And then it went, it's like everything was, the essence was suddenly he was begging for raindrops because it's the rain that the people complain about, which is what actually, creates the growth that we need, right? And that it's often the struggle. It's like it's the storms of this world that create the strongest wood in the forest. And we want to have beautifully nice breezy days, but that's not what creates the strong wood. And that's what it reminds me of, this idea of I love that story so much of this farmer going back to God and saying, "Please let it rain, please. I'm so tired of sunny days," because his crops were dried up and looking terrible, right? Anyway.
Isn't that human? It's so human to think, you just want what you don't have right then. And it's so easy to forget the balance of things, right? Somehow it seems to me a very human thing to be that short-sighted. We do that.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting time that we're living in, is that we see only one side of it, but there are always many sides of it. There are always thorns on the rose, and there's always, whatever it is, there's always a still point inside a storm. And, and the beauty of poetry is that it brings us to that place of remembering, or at least for me, to remember those things. And then we don't feel so terrible when we planted beauty, but it, went sour or whatever. We're like, oh, well, I guess I'm living a poetic life, I guess. Anyway, Rosemary, we're going to take another very short break and reflect on living poetic lives, and then we'll be back in a moment with more on poetry.
Bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. ascendinghearts.com.
Life is a flow, and enlightenment is simply harmonizing with the way life really is. Then you find that life is effortless, benevolent, and free of all suffering. Hey everyone, this is GP Walsh, and I want to invite you to my brand new radio show that's launching right here on OMTimes Radio called The Flow of Enlightenment. I've been a spiritual teacher for decades, and my greatest pleasure is being able to share with you these deep and highly practical spiritual ideas. So join me in The Flow every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern and let yourself be transformed.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
Hi, welcome back to Voice Rising. I'm your host, Cara Johnstad, and with me in studio today is poet Rosemerry Wahtola Trommer, and we are talking about her newest collection of poetry called Hush. We are basically now living a poetic mindset and lifestyle, and it will continue after the show is finished because we now have discovered the secrets to life, remembering that we are a rosebud and a thorn at the same time. Rosemerry, I heard, and I know from a few interviews, you also love to sing. Is that true?
Very much true.
Yeah. I was kind of wondering what for you the difference is for you when you enter quietude, or I'm sure that you hear the poems also singing in your head while you're writing. But what is for you the difference between your writing voice? And of course, you're also a performance. You do spoken word, and you're a performance artist. What is the difference between these different ways or these different layers of voice, the inner voice that you have through your mindfulness practice, your writing voice, your speaking when you're performing, and then what I would say, of course, because I am just loving to sing, that singing voice that can just take off into many octaves or deep dive. What is for you as somebody who lives all those different levels, the difference, or where do they come together?
That's such an interesting question. Let me think. I mean, obviously they're all rooted in the same way. And they're all having conversations with each other. And I remember one time speaking with my therapist about something that I wasn't speaking up about in my real life. And I remember she said to me, well, then, you'll need to find your voice. And I said, well, that's what I teach. And she said, well, then, everything you learn will make you a better teacher. And I remember thinking then about how all these different ways that we use our voice are related to each other, about how to know how to use the voice in a poem and to say the thing that must be said in the poem, right? And to use the voice in a conversation to say what must be said, and to and then to use the singing. Maybe the thing about singing is this. Singing is very much meant to me as a conversation with silence. I'm very aware in singing of how silence holds up the song. And I'm very aware, I guess, then of that on a page with how does the blank hold up the potential for the poem? And I'm so interested in that too, and how Mark Nepo calls the breath the quietest of songs. And I like thinking about how even the breath is a song, and that when we are quiet, it's as if we're singing along with every other thing, being on the world that also contains that silence. So I think there's a kind of a communion that happens with voice when we lift up our voice, like in singing, and there's this incredible harmony if you happen to be lucky enough to be singing with other people.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what happens also with poems. I like to call poetry the big conversation, where I'm very aware that poems are all joining in with each other across continents, across centuries, across cultures, all of us exploring the same thing. What does it mean to be alive? And all of us raising our voices to that, right? So I think that whether it's a song or whether it's a poem or even a conversation with a loved one that's very difficult or that's lovely, I guess they're all doing that same thing, which is using voice to explore what does it mean to be alive? What are we doing here?
What does it mean to be alive? Did you ever compose as someone who sings? Did you ever sing your own poetry?
Yes, I started doing that about every now and then. I'm lucky enough to perform with a band. And
Nice.
it's my great joy. I'm giddy just thinking about it. To get to play with a musician, and especially someone who also feels very free and spontaneous with their instrument. The synergy of what can happen in that moment, I love. If I've memorized poems, which I have many, many by heart, my own and other people's, it really does free me up then to explore what's possible singing a poem. And it allows different phrases to be repeated, and it allows for a playfulness that doesn't necessarily happen on a page. And that's, to me, that's pure magic. I just love performing with either a band or a single, a flute or a guitar or a drum or a piano. Just somebody who's having fun also, just playing along. I used to have a cellist, and we would perform
that
all
is
over.
gorgeous.
It was really fun.
That is gorgeous.
We had so much fun.
That is gorgeous.
I had a cellist. I had a cellist friend. Is what she was. I had a friend who played cello.
You had a friend who played cello. Yes, the possessive. So I want to ask you another wonderful question, because now I have a real poet on the show, so I can ask these questions. In poetry, you're always connecting. I mean, you're talking in the show about, this awareness for being connected and in relationship to things, right? And of course, you said at the top of the hour that you do live in a small town or in the country, and you have 2 teenage boys and a husband. I was just curious. I mean, this is my curiosity. A lot of people want to, they romanticize poetry, of course, and they want to read poetry. But to live with a poet is, a lot of people get nervous because you're very authentic and very truthful, and you need a lot of space normally, a lot of quietude, and many writers, they have their writing hours and everything. How do you find that balance? Is it easy for you, somebody who might need a lot of quietude, to be in the middle of family life, or
Yeah.
Or I don't know, because that's my experience. My experience is a lot of people fantasize about poets, but very few people actually want the authenticity that poets love, to be really deep and real and intimate with their moments, or they love to have a lot of space and be alone.
Yeah, it's so. I have my friend has a T-shirt that I used to borrow. It says, "Be careful what you say; you'll end up in my poem." And certainly, the people around me know that they will end up in my poem. Some people think that's a terrifying thing, and some are like, "Please, please, put me in your poem." I think my poor family, all of them, everyone in my family has hundreds and hundreds of poems about them. They don't read them, though. And sometimes they hear about them from other people.
Yeah.
I don't know how. My family all know me as me, right? And I think that's always a fascinating thing to me. To my kids, I am their mom, right? And I think they don't know what it'd be like to have someone who wasn't a poet as a mom, but I think that they just want me to make their lunch. They just want me to wash their clothes and sit down and snuggle on the couch and watch a movie with them.
Yeah.
I think that there's a glorious thing about being completely pedestrian. Like, I am as normal as a mom as could be. I think, and I think that the invitation is, you're right. I mean, part of the reason I used to write at night was because I longed for that. I longed for quiet time. I used to stay up every night until 4 a.m. and just sleep a few hours so that I would have that large, quiet, personal space. Like, I crave it. I want it so much. Yeah. And as a family person, it's very difficult to achieve, especially during quarantine. I make it so I go outside so they don't see me. Like, I'm unavailable, right? I'm gone.
Yeah.
I go ski, I go walk, and find that time for myself there. And I set it off. I go off in my corner and write my poem, and they all know. Writing a poem, though, I have to say, it used to take more space than it does for me now, which is to say, the more practice you have, the more fluent you get, and the easier it is to show up whatever the circumstances, no matter how many people are around me or how many they are. The other thing is that I've made it non-negotiable, right? I will write a poem every day. Everyone in my family knows that. That will happen every single day.
That's your yesness, which I love. I have the same absolute commitment to what I do, and it's your yesness of just showing up, and then everybody relaxes with it because they know that that's how it is. It's like read for us your
none
poem.
None of them remember a time.
None of them remember another time. I love this image that you gave in a poem called, I think it's called The Blizzard. I hope I have these titles right. It's on page 105. And I just thought it was such a beautiful image as we talk about relationship. Would you like to read that for us?
Here it is. This is The Blizzard Reminds Me. The way the spruce tree holds the wet snow, how in a blizzard its branches will bend and bend and bend until they release. That is the way I want to love you. Want to trust that I can hold the weight of you as you fall, as you continue to fall, hold you until it seems I will break, and then, just when I'm sure I can't take anymore, release you back into yourself. Not in anger, not in fear, not with guilt. Release you with green resilience, so that come the next storm, I am prepared to catch you again, and let you go.
That is so beautiful. I'm happy that this wonderful prize got you inspired to connect even more with the world, the trees and the blizzards. And for a girl that grew up in Wisconsin like myself, I remember those blizzards, and suddenly I was like, wow, it's true. That's how the trees do it. That's how the trees do it. They carry the weight. They carry the weight. They carry the weight and are dressed in this incredible whiteness, right? This not the cut, but they're just reflecting, right? So it looks so, when you look outside after a snowstorm, there's something magical about it, but there's also that weight of the snow, and then just to release it. Where do you think, here in the midst of a global pandemic, and it's not only the pandemic, we have a lot of things we're in the midst of, right? We have a lot of things we're in the midst of with, climate crisis and many, many things. Release the heaviness. If we could be like that spruce tree, where would you, or what do you think this moment is inviting us to understand? Do you think, I think I had an interview with Mark Nepo, and he was talking about this, about how when we share with each other, we kind of distribute the suffering. It's like when we read to each other poetry, when we understand how connected we are. So where would you like to be in 6 months from now? Where would you like to be? We have the winter solstice. Where would you like to be in spring? And where would you like to see us as a world be?
Oh my goodness. Well, as a world, my deepest hope, I suppose, is for us to be generous with each other. And I think that's the biggest invitation right now, is for us to really understand how connected we are, how we are truly all just like stranded on this little planet in the middle of nowhere with what a gift. What a gorgeous gift. And wouldn't it be something, Cara, if we embraced each other instead of fighting each other? If we noticed how essential the way we meet each other is to our own well-being and the well-being of the whole world. That I just wish we would embrace the spirit of generosity with each other.
Yeah. I would love that too. I think it's a huge invitation that we have now to decide, as you say, the yesness of the moment, to really make that commitment of what we would like to create and co-create together, how we would like to design the world. And I always say, when I'm talking about music also, is if you know how to shift harm to harmony, you basically know that balance is to offer. If there are thorns, then you offer the buds. If there are buds, they might need protection. You might even need a little tiny thorn bush once in a while, but to try to seek that balance and the harmony. So share with us your homepage before we close the show.
You can find me at wordwoman.com. That's true.
Excellent. Rosemerry, it was a great pleasure. I am awestruck and in love with your commitment and your service to humanity. I thank you so much, and I hope to stay in touch.
Thank you, Cara. Me too.